Welcome to another deep dive, and this time we're tackling CBT. We've got academic papers, a whole chapter from a psychotherapy textbook. You really went all out. I, for one, am excited to dig into it all.
Yeah, me too. It seems like everyone's talking about CBT these days, but there's so much more to it than just, surface level stuff.
Right, exactly. And what really struck me looking at all this is that CBT seems to be less about, just understanding your thoughts and feelings and more about really giving you the tools to actually change things.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how it came about, back in the 50s, these pioneers like Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck, they weren't happy with psychoanalysis.
It was too slow.
Yeah, too slow, too focused on the past. They wanted something more active, more focused on the here and now and giving people tools to make changes right away.
So they came up with a system where really you're in control, right? It's
Yeah.
like it's all there in the name, cognitive behavioral therapy. You recognize the power of your own thoughts and actions.
You got it. And one of the key concepts in CBT is this thing called the ABC model.
ABC.
Yeah. It basically explains how our beliefs about events, not the events themselves, are what shape our reactions.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And the textbook actually gives this example. It talks about someone walking down the street, their friend walks by without acknowledging them, and later, this person's feeling down, thinking, oh, they must not like me.
Happens all the time.
Right. But CBT says, hold on, it wasn't the friend walking by, it was the person's belief about being ignored. They might think, oh, they're ignoring me because they don't like me. And then, boom, I must be a bad person.
Whoa. So we got to uncover those beliefs, right? The hidden, often kind of irrational ones.
Exactly. And CBT dives into these patterns. They're called dysfunctional thinking, basically. Ways of thinking that don't help. They just lead to stress.
Yeah, and in the textbook, there are all these categories of dysfunctional thinking. One that I thought was interesting was inferential distortions. It sounds kind of scary, but it's actually really cool.
Oh, yeah. Those are imagine you're looking at the world through a wonky lens. Everything's distorted.
I get it.
One example is black and white thinking. Everything is either good or bad, no middle ground.
Oh, I know some people like that.
Right. Then there's filtering, where you only see the negative stuff. It's like, rose-colored glasses, but in reverse.
Yeah.
And then there's overgeneralization, where one bad thing happens and it was like the end of the world. I failed this one test, so I'm going to fail all my classes. I'm never going to graduate.
Oh, so dramatic.
Right. It's like we're setting ourselves up to fail by thinking that way. And then you've got, mind reading and fortune telling. Those are fun.
Ooh, tell me about those.
So mind reading is assuming you know what other people are thinking, and usually it's negative, right?
Sure.
They must think I'm stupid.
Even though you have no idea.
Exactly. And fortune telling is treating your predictions about the future as if they're facts. I know I'm going to bomb that presentation tomorrow.
Yeah. It's like you're already setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly. So CBT helps us see these patterns, see how they might not be doing us any favors.
Right. And it goes even deeper than those patterns, right? It talks about core beliefs, those deep down beliefs we have about ourselves and the world that shape how we see everything.
Oh, you're right on track. It's imagine someone whose core belief is that the world is a dangerous, unpredictable place, right? They're constantly on edge, thinking something bad's going to happen.
Like they're living in a constant state of what if.
Exactly. Their internal alarm system is always going off. And these core beliefs, they're like the root system of our thinking patterns. They influence how we react to everything around us.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connections here.
And what's cool about CBT is that it actually gives us tools to dig up these core beliefs, question them,
yeah,
and maybe even transform them into something more helpful.
So it's not just about managing the symptoms, it's about getting to the root of the problem.
You got it. And it's very action oriented. You work with a therapist, you figure out the connections between your thoughts, feelings, and actions. You challenge those irrational beliefs and you start building new, more helpful ways of thinking.
Then you got to put those new ways of thinking into practice.
Oh, absolutely. It's like learning a new skill. Got to practice it in real life.
Yeah. And I noticed CBT has all these different tools, right? Both cognitive and behavioral strategies. So it's not just one size fits all.
Exactly. It's like a toolbox full of different techniques to help people in different ways.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
It's something I notice is that CBT really emphasizes homework, right? It's not just talking in therapy. It's about doing stuff between sessions.
That's where the real magic happens, right?
Yeah.
You're taking those new ways of thinking and actually living them.
Totally. Now, I'm curious about some of the specific techniques, because the textbook mentioned a few that I thought were really interesting, like the double standard dispute.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
What is that all about?
It's simple, but powerful. You basically ask yourself, would I judge a friend as harshly as I'm judging myself for the same mistake?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Right. It helps you see things differently, be a bit kinder to yourself.
I like that. What other techniques stood out to you?
There's also the catastrophe scale, where you basically, rank your fears alongside other potential events, from small annoyances to like full-blown catastrophes.
So you can see that maybe things aren't as bad as you think.
Right. Even if the worst thing happened, it might not be as unbearable as you're imagining.
This is all about perspective.
Exactly. And there's one more that I thought was really interesting, the blow-up technique.
Yeah, that one sounds fun.
It is. It's all about using humor to, like, disarm your anxiety.
Tell me more.
Okay, so you take your worst fear,
Yeah.
right? And you imagine it blown completely out of proportion, like way over the top, almost like a comedy sketch.
So you're basically laughing at your fears.
Exactly. Sometimes laughter is the best medicine.
Yeah.
When you're laughing, it's hard to stay scared.
That makes sense. So it seems like CBT gives us all these tools to understand and change our thinking patterns. But for someone who's like brand new to CBT, what's the first step? Where do they even begin?
That's a great question. I think the first step is recognizing that CBT is an active process. It's about rolling up your sleeves and be ready to put in the work.
So you can't just lie on a couch and talk about your childhood.
Not exactly. You got to take charge of your own mental well-being. And finding a good CBT therapist, someone you connect with, that's crucial. You need that foundation of trust and understanding.
Like a partnership, working together towards the same goal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what happens next is, it really is a partnership. And early on, it's important to address any anxieties the client might have about even seeking help.
Like feeling ashamed or worried that therapy won't work.
Exactly. We want to normalize those feelings, challenge those beliefs about therapy itself. And one of the best ways to do that is to show them that change is possible, that they have the power to make things better.
I like that. So once you've established that, what's next?
Well, then comes the assessment phase. This is where we really tailor the approach to the individual. It starts with understanding the client's perspective, how they see the problem.
So it's not just about slapping a label on it, it's about listening to their story.
Right. It's about understanding their unique story, what factors might be contributing to their challenges. We look at their personal history, their social life, the severity of the problem, even personality stuff.
Wow. So it's a very holistic approach, taking everything into account.
It is. And we also want to understand how they feel about having this problem, what we call secondary disturbances.
Secondary disturbance.
Yeah, like, maybe someone's anxious about being anxious, that kind of thing. It adds another layer of complexity.
Oh, right. That makes sense. So after you've gathered all this information, then what?
Well, during the assessment, we also got to rule out any non-psychological causes for their struggles. Things like medical conditions, side effects from meds, maybe substance abuse, even lifestyle factors.
So you're making sure you're really getting to the root of the issue.
Exactly. And once that's all done, we move into preparing the client for therapy.
How do you prepare someone for therapy?
It's about a few things. First, clarifying the goals. What do they want to achieve? And assessing their motivation. Are they really ready to put in the work? Then we introduce them to the basics of CBT, including this thing called the biopsychosocial model.
Biopsychosocial, that's a mouthful.
I know, right? But it's basically the idea that our mental health is influenced by, biology like genetics, psychology, our thoughts and feelings, and social factors, our relationships, environments.
Well, it's not just one thing, it's all these things interacting.
Exactly. We're not just our thoughts. We're influenced by all these different factors. So we explain this model, make sure they understand how CBT works, set realistic expectations, talk about specific approaches we'll be using. We even talk about potential implications of the therapy and create a clear agreement, outlining everyone's roles and responsibilities.
So it's all about setting the stage for a successful journey.
Right. Making sure we're on the same page, the client feels comfortable and informed. And then we can move into the implementation phase where the real work begins.
Okay, so what happens in the implementation phase?
This is where we really get down to business.
Yeah.
We start analyzing specific situations where the problem occurs. Like, let's say someone has social anxiety.
Yeah.
We might analyze a recent event where they felt anxious in a social setting, break it down.
How do you break it down?
We'd look at the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that happened, use techniques like thought recording or rational analysis to see if any unhelpful beliefs popped up.
So you're helping them see those connections, right,
Ah,
between thoughts, feelings, and actions.
exactly. Helping them understand how their mind works, how thoughts can influence their emotions and actions. And then we work on developing new, more helpful ways of thinking and behaving
Yeah.
in similar situations.
So they have a new set of tools to handle those tough spots.
That's the idea. We might even create what we call behavioral assignments, where they gradually confront their fears and change their behavior patterns.
Give me an example.
Okay, so for social anxiety, we might encourage them to start with small social interactions, baby steps, and then gradually work up to more challenging situations.
Taking what they learn in therapy and applying it in real life.
Exactly. And we might also use other strategies like relaxation training or teaching them better social skills, to give them a wider range of tools to cope with those challenges.
It seems like CBT is really personalized. It adapts to each person's needs.
It is. We're constantly checking progress, making adjustments along the way, making sure everything is working for the client. It's a dynamic process, not one size fits all.
It's like a dance. You're moving together, adjusting as you go.
I like that. And as we start wrapping up the therapy, we prepare the client for what we call termination.
The end of the road.
Yeah, but it's not just about saying goodbye, you know. It's about making sure they have the skills to keep moving forward, to handle any future challenges.
Giving them a toolkit for long-term well-being.
Exactly. We help them identify things that might trigger them, develop strategies to prevent relapse, solidify what they've learned, and we talk about, maybe seeking support in the future if they need it.
So it's normalizing the idea that it's okay to ask for help even after therapy ends.
Right. We want them to feel empowered to take care of their mental health, always. Now, before we dive into specific techniques, I think it's worth touching on some key principles that guide CBT.
Okay, let's hear about those principles.
Well, one of the biggest ones is empowering the client to become their own therapist.
Like we were talking about earlier, putting them in the driver's seat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And CBT is very educational, very collaborative. We work together, explain everything clearly, design homework assignments together. It's a true partnership based on respect and understanding.
I like that. What else is important?
Well, CBT is usually brief, time-limited. It's focused on solving problems in the present, not dwelling on the past.
So it's not like those therapies that go on forever.
Right. And importantly, it's based on scientific research.
Yeah.
It encourages a realistic, logical approach to thinking and problem solving.
It's not about magic, it's about things that actually work.
Exactly. And ultimately, CBT aims to create real, lasting change in the client's beliefs, not just get rid of symptoms.
It's about changing how they see themselves, how they see the world.
Yes, giving them the tools to live a more fulfilling life. Not just feeling better, but become the stronger, more resilient version of themselves.
That's amazing. So with all that in mind, let's take a peek into the CBT toolkit, shall we?
Let's do it. There are so many cool techniques to explore, some of them surprisingly simple, but super effective.
Okay, let's crack open that toolkit. What kind of tools are we talking about?
Oh, there are tons, but let's start with self-monitoring. It's all about becoming more aware of your thoughts, feelings, behaviors, the whole shebang.
So like becoming a detective of your own mind.
Yeah, exactly. You pay close attention to your reactions throughout the day, and you record them. You can use a journal, an app, whatever works for you.
What kind of things would you be looking for, like tracking?
It depends on your goals.
Yeah.
Like you could track how your mood changes. Maybe you notice certain things trigger those changes, or you could track specific behaviors, like how often you put yourself down or avoid certain situations.
So you're basically gathering data on yourself, then using that data to figure out what to do.
Exactly. It's super helpful because then you and your therapist can see patterns, you know, and come up with strategies that actually fit your specific needs.
It's like creating a personalized plan for change. I like it. Okay, what else is in this toolkit?
Well, we talked a bit about rational analysis before. That's where logic and evidence come in. We use it to uh, examine those irrational beliefs, the ones that are causing you trouble, and challenge them.
Okay, how does that work exactly?
Let's say, for example, you're feeling like a total failure because you didn't get that promotion at work,
Ouch. Yeah.
right? So we'd take that belief, I'm a failure, and we'd put it on trial, so to speak. We'd ask, what evidence supports this? What evidence goes against it? Is there a more realistic way to look at things?
So you're basically challenging those negative thoughts, forcing them to defend themselves.
Yeah. And often when you do that, you realize that, Your initial thought, that knee-jerk reaction, it might not be the whole truth. You start to see other perspectives, ones that are more helpful, more accurate.
It's like shining a light on those dark thoughts that can't hide anymore.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Now, sometimes we use techniques that are a little more playful, a little more hands-on, and those can be surprisingly effective.
Ooh, playful therapy. I'm intrigued. What are some examples?
Remember we talked about the blow-up technique, using humor to take the sting out of those anxiety-provoking thoughts.
Oh, yeah, where you imagine your worst fear blown way out of proportion, like a silly cartoon.
That's the one. You exaggerate it so much that it becomes absurd, and you start to see how irrational your fear really is. Plus, laughter's a great stress reliever.
I do. Hard to stay anxious when you're laughing. Any other techniques that use imagery or visualization?
There's one called time projection, where you basically fast forward in your mind past the event you're worried about.
So, like, if I'm scared of giving a presentation, I'd imagine myself a week later, a month later, even a year later.
Exactly. And as you picture yourself moving through time, you realize that life goes on. Even if the presentation doesn't go perfectly, it's not the end of the world.
It helps you gain some perspective, realize you're stronger than you think.
Right. Now, one of the most powerful tools in the CBT toolkit is exposure. That's where you face your fears head on, but in a very controlled, gradual way.
So you're not just throwing someone in the deep end, it's more strategic.
Exactly. Like if someone's terrified of spiders, we wouldn't just throw a tarantula on
Yeah, I
them.
was going to say.
We'd start small, maybe looking at pictures, then videos, eventually maybe even seeing a real spider, but from a safe distance, of course.
Mm.
The key is to go at a pace that feels okay for the person.
And the idea is that the more you're exposed to something, the less scary it becomes.
Exactly. Your brain learns that the feared situation isn't actually dangerous. And as the fear goes down, you're less likely to avoid it, which means you can start doing more things, enjoying life more.
It's like rewiring your brain. So cool.
That's
So CBT isn't just for people with like serious anxiety or depression, right? It can help anyone who wants to improve their emotional well-being.
absolutely. Whether you're struggling with a specific issue or just feeling kind of stuck, CBT can give you those tools to make positive changes.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I understand CBT so much better now and how our thoughts really do shape our experiences.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, the learning doesn't stop here. There's always more to discover about CBT.
What would you suggest for someone who wants to learn more?
Well, talking to a qualified CBT therapist is a great first step